Next point, the data fields. And what is a data field? It's the information you can see on your watch, and this is very interesting. Make sure you pick a watch that is able to give you all the information you want on your wrist while you're doing your sport activity. I'm talking here about speed, pace, average speed, vertical speed, calories, distance travel, or even remaining distance, elevation, heart rate, cadence, the stopwatch from the beginning of the activity or maybe the one of the lap, the temperature, the direction, the number of steps, the percentage of oxygen, your power in watts, and even the clock. It's better to have too many data choices than not enough. There are some watches that just for your heart rate, it can display it in so many ways. Your pulse in the gauge graph with the level of 1 to 5, more commonly known as the zone. Your pulse with a chart that show you now compared to the previous minutes. Your pulse on average. Or rather than displaying just your heart rate, it can also display it as percentage of what you can achieve. Like for example, your maximum is 200 beats per minute and your heart rate is at 150, so this means you are at 75%. Or even as a percentage considering the lowest you can go. So if your minimum is at 50 and your maximum still at 200 and you're going still at 150, you would rather be at 67%. It could also tell you the time you have spent since the beginning of the activity in a zone. Or it could also tell you all the previous information for the current lap. And maybe even more. And here we're only talking about heart rate. Imagine all of those variations for all the fields that we have seen a little bit earlier, like the speed, the distance, the elevation. You get it. In short, you have watches that are limited to some available information, and even worse, I have tested a watch that was able to calculate when I was riding my speed in kilometers per hour or in miles per hour if you're in that kind of country, but when I was walking, the only option I had was my pace. But who are you to decide what I want to see into my activity? Give me the choice, don't force me to use what you think is good for me.
Well, I've just realized that this is now a problem solved. They had it into the app. So, thank you, but I can still see that some data fields are only available in some sports. Just let the user choose what they want. Don't limit them to what you think they want. And now back to the video.
So again, unless you totally don't care and all you want is your speed and distance, make sure you have a wide selection of data fields even if you won't use half of them. Too much is better than not enough, at least in this case. Another thing that is very important about the data fields is how much you can display on a single page. I like when the watch gives me the freedom of choice. Some will want to have one huge piece of data because their eyes is no longer what they was. Others will want a little more but not too much because it must remain easy to read when you're moving. And in more relaxed sport like walking, I may want to put as much information as possible so that I never have to change pages. I raise my arm and I have access to all the data on the same page, rather than pressing a button until I reach the page that have the information that I want. On this watch, I can have access to up to 9 data fields at the same time, and some fields can even be divided, so it can be even more. I can also build myself a page on which I see data from various sizes. I often do this to display, for example, my speed in large and right next to it my average speed in small. Another feature that I like, and this one is yet only available at Garmin, is the auto climb. Like his name says, this feature allows you to automatically switch page when you're climbing a hill. The kind of data that I want to have access when I'm climbing a hill is way different than the one that I have when I'm on the flat. I want to see my vertical speed, my altitude, my elevation gain, or my grade. And when I'm riding uphill, The last thing that I want to do is to have to press on a button to have access to that data. With a Garmin, it can be done automatically if you have taken the time to program it on your sport mode. Last point about the data fields, I love when my watch gives me the freedom to choose what I will have on my watch face. In fact, on almost all watches, we have a choice in relation to the type of interface we want to have, with ends or with numbers, and with some different interfaces. But very few watches will give you a real freedom as to the data fields you see. If you take this interface, you will have your current elevation and your number of steps. Why? Let me choose. On my Garmin again, and sorry, I tried to stay as neutral as possible, but I realized by writing that video that most of the points that I took in note to discuss about into that video are really well developed and thought out only on Garmin. So on my Garmin Tactics, like many other Garmin watches, I choose to have from a range of 22 available data that I was going to have at my disposal at all the time outside of my sport activity the following 9 datas: the date and time, my heart rate, the sun cycle on a graph, the current altitude, the charging time, the current temperature, the maximum and minimum of the day, and my number of steps. I was able to select the watch interface, the data displayed, and their layout. This is very well personalized. The only data that is not possible to change, and it's a shame because I'm sure some people would do it, is the big one in the middle, the time. This video was an extract of the most complete sport watch purchase guide on YouTube. If you want to see the full video, you can click just right here, and if you want to see the other extracts, you can click just right there. Otherwise, if you're ready to buy your own watch, you can follow my link in the description. And now would be the time to click somewhere, like right now.